Do you like surprises? For the most part, I think I do. I remember in my lifetime some years ago where someone threw me a surprise birthday party, and at that party there were all sorts of people there that I hadn't seen in a very long time, and it was an absolute delight. Once I got my heart rate back down and as I walked into this banquet hall one night. There are surprises that we really, really like, and there are sometimes lots of surprises that we're not particularly keen on. And one of the expressions I've been using over the last number of years, given what's been going on on our continent, is I say, nothing else can surprise me. And lo and behold, something always has. It's extraordinary. We're getting to a point where we've, I think, had enough. We're feeling very fatigued. And every given week, something changes. There are new surprises that are seemingly putting us back. And just in the last few days, we've heard from medical officers of our province and that Toronto, Peel will be locked down again. The surges in Halton and Hamilton areas are growing higher, and it's getting tiresome and weary and worrying and almost no longer surprising. I watched this past weekend people going out to, quote, prepare for what was coming, and it was all about survival of the fittest, it seemed. Again, people were running out of malls with cartloads of paper towels and toilet paper, expecting some kind of Armageddon. Well, again, does it surprise us, given the nature of how we can behave as human beings sometimes? I ask the question, do you like surprises? Because at the core of our passage this morning, it is also about surprises. So Jesus identifies. He comes in a great glory. There's this apocalyptic feel to Matthew's passage, this parable this morning. Jesus identifies two types of people, sheep and goats. Sheep on the right, goats on the left. And not particularly why the goats got the bad side. And these so-called sheep and those named goats are surprised by what Jesus says. He says, when he talks to them. And they say, in response to what Jesus has to say, Lord, when did we? Or, Lord, when didn't we? And both seem to capture the kind of the surprise and the shock that each of these groups expresses when Jesus commends or condemns their behavior. But what are they exactly surprised by? That they acted either in a virtuous way by feeding the hungry or clothing the naked or caring for the sick or visiting the imprisoned, or on the other hand, in an unvirtuous kind of way by neglecting to do these things for others. Interestingly, no, it's not that. Neither group denies the way they behaved. They, in fact, are surprised by their failure to recognize Jesus for who he was. Or more to the point, they are surprised by where Jesus has decided to hang out. See, as this parable opens up, when Jesus, the Son of Man, comes in glory and the angels with him, then he will sit on the throne of his glory, as Matthew writes. No one expects to see Jesus in the face of the disadvantaged or the poor or the imprisoned or all those who are in extraordinary need of some kind. Perhaps that's to be expected. Because I think some of us think of God typically in terms of power and might and glory. And indeed, the parable begins in just that manner. The rest of this parable, after all, depicts this same kind of royal figure, the Son of Man, as identifying with, to quote, the least of these, and therefore seems to undermine our tendency to look for God in places of power. If so, then this parable might not only call into question where we typically look for God, but actually reorientate us into trying to find God in the different kinds of places of our lives that we might not otherwise look. In this parable, it seems to me that Jesus promises to be always with those who are in greatest need, which means that if we want to experience God fully, deeply, and truly, we will look for God in the need of those around us, and indeed within our own needs. We typically think of God in ultimate terms, all-knowing, all-powerful, the creator of the heavens and earth, the giver and sustainer of life. But that's not where we are invited today to meet or to be met by the divine. And this could be a bit of a surprise. Matthew emphasizes that the greater good is not only about those who we are comfortable with, those we love, those who are like us, but Matthew is talking about finding God in the places of discomfort, amongst those we are uncomfortable with, those who we generally do not take responsibility for. It is clear that how we have treated others does matter. That's what Jesus is trying to tell us. The affirmation that Jesus talks about, that is, those who have fed the hungry and given the thirsty something to drink and welcomed the stranger, etc., it resonates with something that we call the Anglican 5 marks of mission. The Anglican 5 marks of mission were mission values that were created some 20-odd years ago that attempt to state and dictate who we are as a community of faith. And those marks of mission were to proclaim the good news of God in the world, to proclaim and to teach, to baptize and to nurture people that we encounter, to respond to human need by loving service, and to transform unjust structures of society, to challenge violence of every kind and pursue peace and reconciliation. And lastly, to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustained and renewed life, all life on this planet of ours. What we do matters. But what Matthew is proposing here is not that what we do as good works, so to speak, in order to get us a seat in heaven. It is about striking a conversation with those that find love and compassion in their hearts, who wish to do for others as they would have done unto them. What is striking in this conversation between Jesus and those who did or did not look after those around him is that they do not know when it was that you saw a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing, etc. Or for the others, when it was that they did not do these things. These are the ways of neighbors loving neighbors. Not with an intention of putting oneself in right with God or earning God's favor, but doing these things because of the person's fundamental attitude towards the world. What is our attitude towards the world? They are not good deeds intended to earn our way into heaven, but the results of the outpouring of a person's love for God and for each other. So Matthew is explicit in his call to consider our own attitudes of those in need. And by God, in any other time in my lifetime, we need it now more than ever. We are more polarized and divided on this continent than any time in my lifetime. It worries me and frightens me and surprises me. But I need to remain faithful to the fact that as human beings, we are called with compassionate hearts to love our neighbor as ourselves, and to follow in the words of the prayer of Teresa of Avila, the wonderful mystic, who wrote this: Christ has no body on earth now but yours, no hands but yours, no feet but yours. Yours are the eyes through which he looks with compassion on the world. Yours are the feet with which he walks to do good. Yours are the hands with which he blesses all the world. Thanks be to God. Amen.